Call the order of the Planning Commission, May 10th public hearing. My name is George Alcaraz. I'm the chairman. Commissioner Anderson and Plumley will not be in attendance today. Before we get started, I've asked Commissioner Costner to lead us in prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Horsley. Please stand.
Eternal Father, we thank you for this glorious day which you have made. We thank you, God, for all of the blessings that you have bestowed upon us. God, as we come to conduct business on behalf of the city, God, we ask that you would bless us with your wisdom and your knowledge and your understanding, that we might be better servants to those who we've been assigned to serve. We ask these blessings in your name and for your sake. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Don. All right, I'd like to just start. Maybe we just have everyone just introduce themselves, starting with Kate over there, our city attorney.
There we go. I'm Kay Wilson. I'm the Deputy City Attorney for Land Use, and I represent the Planning Commission.
Hi, I'm Naomi Stars. Hi, I'm Naomi Stars. I'm from Kempsville, and I represent District 1.
My name is John Costin, and I represent District 9.
My name is Don Horsley. I'm an at-large representative, and I'm a farmer in Blackwater section of Virginia Beach.
George Alcaraz, District 5.
Holly Cuellar, District 8.
Hi, I'm Catherine Byler, District 4, and I'm a new appointee, so today's my first day. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm Michael Clemens, District 2, employee at Old Dominion University.
I'm William Parks. I'm an architect and represent District 10. Thanks.
I'm Caitlin Alcock, Interim Planning Administrator for the Planning Department, and I'll briefly introduce staff. To my left, clerking today, we have Madison Eichels and Shannon Hedrick. At the table, we have our Zoning Administrator, Hannah Sabo, Deputy Director, Kathy Warren, Wadow with our Planning Administration team, Marshall Coleman. We have Elizabeth Huertas with our IT team, and then out in the audience, we have Hank Morrison, our Comprehensive Planning Manager, planners, Elizabeth Nowak, Michaela McKinney, and Aubrey Trebelcock. We have our Interim Deputy Director, Carrie Buchholt, as well as for zoning, Brandon Hackney, Garrick Hannigan, and Pam Witham.
Thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate that. Before we get started, and please excuse, but we do have a couple individuals here that we need to recognize. So take about 10, 15 minutes for us to do this before we get into the agenda. And I apologize to the applicants and the guests here. So on behalf of the Planning Commission and staff, it's our honor to recognize the former commissioners who are present today for their years of service to the Commission and the City of Virginia Beach. Excuse me. Altogether, they've nearly contributed almost half a century of collective service. Over the course, you like that? Over the course of the years, they've earned bragging rights for surviving public hearings on WebEx during pandemic, attending joint meetings with City Council that were late into the evenings, a couple times 1 a.m., endless forums and meetings on short-term rentals, and have met with citizens all over the city in places to include the Convention Center, the old City Hall, recreation centers, and now our new municipal center. Their mindsets of maps on our beloved city. Our city is stronger because of the engagement of the leadership of these who served on these boards, committees, commissions, and task forces. And diversity of thought always allows us to meet new challenges. Having said that, I'd like to pass on to Holly. Did I skip something here? Don, if you can come forward, and Caitlin come forward. What we're going to do is call the commissioners up. We're going to say a few words. If we don't get it right, you may correct us. And at the podium, we're going to take a picture, then we're going to do a group picture, okay? All right. So, Holly, go ahead.
We have two former commissioners who are not here today, but I'm just going to recognize their names, which is Mr. David Bradley and Barry Frankenfield. So hopefully there'll be another opportunity for them to join us, and we can recognize them for our service. So I'd ask that please Dee Oliver come forward.
This is the 50 years.
Commissioner Oliver joined the commission in 2014. She served continuously until February of 2023. She's brought a diverse skill set from her experience as a wife, mother, author, and businesswoman to the commission and served as a former chair. Her actions clearly define the term community organizer and activist, and never once has she backed down from a fight. I look forward to seeing where her passion leads her next, as service is in her blood. Thank you very much, Dee.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have anything to say? Jack will. Yeah, just do them all.
Okay, next, if we could please have David Redmond join us at the front. Commissioner Redmond arrived on the scene in April of 2016 and served until February of 2023. His jovial spirit and sense of humor lightened up our meetings, and his strategic focus on real estate development proved a valuable asset to the commission. David maintained a pro-business, eliminate the obstacles approach during his tenure. He was also an excellent master of ceremonies for his willingness to introduce members of the commission each month. Thank you for your service.
Go ahead.
Oh, let me keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
Jack Wall, if you please come forward. Okay. Commissioner Wall is the past chair of the commission and served from January 2015 to February 2023. Being an engineer is a unique skill set, and Jack brought his full toolbox to the commission. We have a special gift for Jack as former chair, and we know that engineers like tools, and this ceremonial gavel will serve him in his future endeavors. Thank you, Jack, for your service and leadership to the Planning Commission.
Thanks, Jack.
And last but not least, of course, is David Weiner.
That's another 50 years right there. And going.
Commissioner Weiner is a standout volunteer who served 9 years on the Planning Commission. From 2014 to 2023, he and Dee Oliver joined and exited the Planning Commission together. One thing that isn't spoken of very often is that when appointed to a commission, the unexpected gift is the gift of friendship with your colleagues. David's leadership as a former chair and advocate for a well-run meeting and passion for the development and preservation of his district were evident at every meeting. His institutional knowledge will be missed. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Dave. If you can all four come forward. Everybody stand up. We can get a picture. Stand up. Just stand up. You get us?
In a little bit in the back. All right, that's good. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. One more. All right, thank you.
All right, guys, thank you. In closing, I'd like to thank all you members for past and present who gave your time for the city. Thank you so much.
I've served with these, you add my experience with these, and you're well over 100 years, I think. But these people have served with me for many years. I don't know, Dave Weiner and Dave Redmond have served with me, and Dee, I don't know, at least 14, 15 years, I'm sure, in the past. And I found them to be very fair people, very knowledgeable people, willing to listen before they made decisions. And it was really a pleasure for me to serve with these folks. And I've been on planning commission many years, but when my main thing from coming from planning commission was the friends that I've accumulated over the years. We
Thank you again. All right, applicants and guests, thank you for letting us do that. At this time, I'd like to have the clerk describe the rules and order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Virginia Beach Planning Commission takes pride in being fair and courteous to all parties in attendance. It is important that all involved understand how the commission normally conducts its meetings. It is equally important that everyone treat each other and the members of the commission with respect and civility. We request that cell phones be put on silent during this meeting. This is an abbreviated explanation of the rules. The complete set of rules is located in the front of the Planning Commission agenda. The following is the order of business for this public meeting: withdrawals and deferrals. The chairman will ask if there are any requests to withdraw or defer an item on the agenda. Consideration of these requests will be made first. Consent agenda. The second order of business is the consideration of the consent agenda, which are those items that the Planning Commission believe are unopposed and which have favorable staff recommendation. Regular agenda. The commission will then proceed with the remaining items on the agenda. When an agenda item has been called, we will recognize the applicant or their representative first. Following the applicant or their representative, and in-person speakers will be called next, and then the speakers participating via WebEx. Speakers in support or opposition of an agenda item will have 3 minutes to speak unless they are solely representing a large group, such as a civic league or homeowners association, in which case they will have 10 minutes. If a speaker does not respond, or if a technical issue occurs which renders the comments unintelligible, we will move on to the next speaker or the next order of business. Please note that the actions taken by the commission today are in the form of a recommendation to the Virginia Beach City Council. The final decision to approve or disapprove an application will be made by the City Council. The commission thanks you for your attendance, and we hope that your experience here today leaves you feeling that you have been heard and treated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next order of business is consideration and for formality withdrawals. Are there any withdrawals? Okay. Again, are there any deferrals? I see none. Vice Chair, I turn it over to you for consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today we have 9 items on our consent agenda. Item number 1 is the City of Virginia Beach, an ordinance to amend the Section 102 of the city zoning ordinance. I'll ask Hannah if she would come forth and read that.
I believe Brandon Hackney will be reading this item.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. So item 1 is an ordinance to amend Section 102 of the city zoning ordinance establishing the Pembroke SGA Overlay District Western Campus, and an ordinance to add Title 24 to the city zoning ordinance to add the Pembroke SGA Overlay District Western Campus. So the Western Campus Overlay District is one of 6 urban districts within the Pembroke SGA plan, the Strategic Growth Area Plan. This ordinance provides the option for any property owner to opt in to the overlay, which allows for uses and development standards that may not be allowed within the underlying zoning districts. So this ordinance is an opt-in, which would allow for any property owner to continue to develop in accordance with its underlying zoning districts and standards. So the purpose of this overlay district is to enhance the economic vitality and walkable character of the Pembroke SGA. Some of the proposed uses that are not allowed in those underlying zoning districts are multifamily, small business such as retail and office, restaurants, craft breweries, and multi-use developments. Should be noted that the parcels that do not wish to opt in to the overlay will continue to be regulated by their underlying zoning districts.
Thank you.
Sir.
The next item on our consent agenda is item number 3, the City of Virginia Beach resolution to amend the City of Virginia Beach Comprehensive Plan by incorporating commercial area pattern book and the flood resiliency toolkit. Hank Morrison, read that.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. All right, so this request is to amend the reference handbook of the comprehensive plan by incorporating 2 documents, the flood resiliency toolkit and the commercial area pattern books, into the documents adopted by reference. The flood resiliency toolkit is a document that provides guidance and best practices for residents to improve resilience to flooding in their homes and within their communities. The toolkit provides a range of recommendations based on the amount of time and money that property owners would need to invest. So this could range from something as simple as storing valuables above the base flood elevation at their home, or to incorporating things like rain gardens in their property, all the way up to elevating your home out of the base flood elevation. Can you go to the next slide, please? The Commercial Area Pattern Book provides a step-by-step guide for phased redevelopment of existing commercial areas within the suburban area of the city. It aims to make the redevelopment process more predictable for both developers as well as members of the community. And it's really intended to be a conversation starter between communities, developers, and planning staff in the early stages of redevelopment. This project began back in February of 2022. So staff worked with a consultant work program architects. We worked very closely with the community to understand what the residents' vision was for this particular area of the city. We held 6 different public meetings and presented to multiple civic leagues and city boards and commissions like the Bayfront Advisory Commission, Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and the Virginia Beach Vision Group. Staff has tried to engage pretty continuously with the community throughout this project, so we had presentations to the Princess Anne Plaza Civic League last month, as well as at the Bayfront Advisory Commission meeting in April. And at their last meeting, the Bayfront Advisory Commission voted to support this request. So staff is going to recommend approval of this ordinance, as it's attempting to improve the quality of life for residents by increasing resilience to flooding and other extreme weather events, and also assisting with the redevelopment of aging commercial centers while maintaining the compatibility with the existing residential communities that they adjoin. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I neglected doing that on the first, but is there any opposition to this amendment? Hearing none. The next item is item number 4, Commonwealth Auto Group. Is there applicant here? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. Are the conditions acceptable?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You should, I'm sorry, sir. Come back and state your name for us. Yes, state your name for us.
Chris Reese.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've asked, is there any opposition? We asked John Costin if he would read this into the record.
The applicant is requesting to modify the conditions of a conditional use permit for motor vehicle sales and rentals approved by the City Council on July 6, 2021, in order to construct a 1,950 square foot storage building at the rear of the 37,730 square foot B2 Community Business Zone parcel. Previous approval required the site to be constructed in substantial conformance with the 2021 approved conceptual plan. Since the proposed 1,950 square foot storage building was not shown on that plan, a modification of conditions application is required.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. The next item on the consent agenda is item number 5, Whit G. Sessoms III and Teresa E. Sessoms, change in nonconformity.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach attorney representing Mr. and Mrs. Sessoms. We greatly appreciate being on the consent agenda. I want to thank Elizabeth for her diligent hard work on this application. All 5 conditions as recommended are acceptable to my clients.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any opposition? Hearing none, we've asked Commissioner Cuellar to read this.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting a change in nonconformity in order to expand an existing dwelling on a nonconforming lot. The applicant plans to construct a 2nd-story addition atop an existing 1-story section of the house. The project will also expand the kitchen at the rear of the house by moving an exterior wall and will install a covered porch pergola over the entrance to the rear unit. The subject property, 109 43rd Street, is located in Cavalier Shores. The applicant has agreed to all the conditions. There are multiple letters of support, no letters of opposition, and both staff is recommending in the plan for approval, and the Planning Commission recommends for the consent agenda.
Thank you. Next item is item number 6, Alacrity LLC, Old Brandon First Colonial Associates. Conditional use permit for body piercing.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Chandra Blunt, representing Alacrity LLC.
Are the conditions acceptable?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any opposition to this application? Hearing none, we've asked Commissioner Parks if he would read this into the record.
Thank you, sir. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for body piercing establishment to expand the types of services currently offered by their business, Studio Good Vibes, which operates a traditional tattoo parlor within the Hilltop Plaza Shopping Center. The conditional use permit was approved by City Council on September 9th, 2015. The piercing booth will be completely private and out of view of both patrons in the suite and the outdoors. No changes to the exterior of the building or any new signage is proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. The next item is item number 7, Nancy Brothwaite, conditional use permit for bulk storage. Mr. Burdon.
Again, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Chairman Alcaraz, members of the commission. For the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach attorney representing Mrs. Brathwaite. We appreciate this application being on the consent agenda. All 8 conditions are acceptable, and we appreciate the waiver on the landscaping, as this facility will not be able to be visible by anybody other than Ms. Brathwaite, as long as the existing vegetation remains. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, we've asked Commissioner Costin if he would read this.
The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to operate a bulk storage yard on a 4.7 acre portion of a 53 acre parcel zoned I-1 light industrial. The bulk storage yard will be used as a temporary storage for recreational vehicles, RVs, boats, trailers, and other motor vehicles. The applicant plans to provide 152 parking stalls for vehicles. Various sizes of stalls will be provided and will range from 35 feet to 50 feet in length. Stalls will be pulled through. It's been recommended for approval, and we've therefore just put it on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Next item is item number 8, Google Mug Market LLC, St. Francis Episcopal Church. Is the applicant. Conditional use permit for an open air market.
Hi, I'm Karen Boyd. I represent Google Mug Market. The conditions are acceptable.
All right, thank you. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, this application is for an open air market in parking lot at the church. This has kind of gotten to be a big thing now, providing people the opportunity to get fresh produce and fresh other foods, crafts, and whatever. It brings people together. It's going to be done 2 Saturdays, the first and third Saturday from April through November. And the hours are from 11 to 2. Staff has said that they would be willing to move the later hours if they so desire to 4. So we thought this was a good application, so we put it on the consent agenda. Hearing no opposition. Thank you. Next item is item number 9, Kelly Pepper.
She's via WebEx. She's via WebEx, the applicant.
Kelly Pepper, and I'm here representing Home Daycare.
Are the conditions acceptable?
Yes.
Is there any opposition to this application? Hearing none, Commissioner Costin.
Applicant currently operates a family daycare home with less than 4 children in her 20,050 square foot home, the Ocean Lake Subdivision, Monday through Friday from the hours of 6:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. As required by the zoning ordinance, the applicant seeks this conditional use permit to increase the maximum number of children to 8. we have seen fit to put this item on the agenda, on the consent agenda as well.
Thank you. The next item is item number 11, Carolina LLC, conditional use permit, short-term rental. Is the applicant here? Applicant's not here, so we assume the conditions are acceptable. Is there any opposition? We would ask Commissioner Cuellar to read this.
The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for a short-term rental. The property is located in the Oceanfront Resort District. There is no opposition, and the applicant agrees to the condition. Staff recommends the application for approval, having met all the requirements, and the Planning Commission recommends the application for the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Cuellar. So, Mr. Chairman, the consent agenda consisting of item number 1, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11. Move that they be approved on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Costin.
The vote is now open. By a vote of 8-0, items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11 have been recommended for approval.
Thank you. That concludes our consent agenda. We'll now move to the hearings. If you can take it from here on who's the next applicant? Madison?
Agenda item 2, the City of Virginia Beach, an ordinance to amend section 202 of the city zoning ordinance pertaining to flood zone height requirements. Eddie Bourdon wants to speak on this item.
I'm sorry this was pulled from consent. I just had a comment. I'm totally in favor of what is proposed today, but from looking at things historically, I think it's important, and I hope the Planning Commission may take this up. The city staff recommended, at least a decade ago, that the freeboard, which is a city-controlled determination, be increased to 3 feet in all flood zones. And then since then, and there was no height change at that time, and because there was no height change provision with that, it was put back down to 2 feet versus 3, because the builders and developers and everybody else, didn't think it was equitable to go a whole full 3 feet. Now with this change and with the HGLs, which we didn't have before, we've got a very complex regulatory system that's easy to make mistakes, because the HGL elevation trumps the freeboard in certain of the subcatchment areas under our floodplain, or not our floodplain, our stormwater ordinance. So my point here is that all the flood hazard zones should, in my view, have a 3-foot freeboard rather than have it, mix and match, because you already have the flex or the unpredictability of the HGL elevation. So we're adding complication after complication. This isn't adding complication. This is actually a part of simplifying the process. And I would hope that we can look at putting a 3-foot freeboard in all of the flood zones rather than a 2 in some and a 3 in another. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bourdon. If I may ask either the zoning administrator or our legal advice, what's your comment on that?
I will say that council, through the last few years, has made a number of changes to the floodplain requirements, and that this amendment does not change what the freeboard requirements are for any of the districts. It simply, as Eddie said, makes it simpler to comply with those requirements, and it makes it so the zoning ordinance is in line with those floodplain requirements.
So making it 3 foot wouldn't benefit all across the board?
That would definitely be something that staff could consider, changing the freeboard requirements across the city. My understanding is there was a lot of discussion during the last change to the flood zone requirements between the development community and then staff, and balancing, the needs for flood mitigation as well as the development desires. So that's where the current freeboard requirements came from.
Ms. Wilson, may I ask you, please?
Yes, I completely agree with Ms. Hannah. Okay. I feel like this revision is something that brings a little more fairness in. If you were building you had to have 3 feet of freeboard, say, then you could only go up 2 feet. So you lost a foot. But we're trying to make it more evenly applicable and fairer. And so I think in order to change the freeboard requirements, what we really need to do is go back and look at the floodplain ordinance holistically, and that'll take us a while. That's not something we can do immediately.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? None? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the item number 2.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Horsley.
A second.
Second by Mr. Parks.
The vote is open. By a vote of 8-0, the item has been recommended for approval.
All right, thank you. What's our next item here? Number 10, Thomas Brown.
Yep. Agenda item number 10, Thomas A. Brown, is an application for a subdivision variance, section 4.4B and D of the subdivision regulations at 2888 Indian River Road. The parcel north of 288 Indian River Road and 2 parcels on the east of a 15-foot wide private lane north of Indian River Road in Council District 2.
Go ahead, just state your name. Oh, gotcha, okay.
I've got a handout that's a large plan that shows what's before you today, and also the plan that shows on a larger 11 by 17 that shows the ultimate development of these, what will actually be with the 3 parcels that are already before council, that were before council and indefinitely deferred while we figured the title stuff out on this, which has taken, this application's taken quite a while because the title issues with regard to the 2 parcels on the east side of the private road, there were some complicated things that had to go way back, and everybody, staff, we're all in agreement that what's before us today, or before you today, are 4 parcels of land, all of which can have a residence constructed on them, and served by a private road. So the variance that's requested is the same access, only it'll be far improved as what exists today, but it'll be a better road in all respects. So we've got, as Aubrey did an excellent job in the pre-briefing of explaining this. I'm not going to go in all the details. That's the first time I've ever written a 3-page narrative on a subdivision variance to explain the title stuff, and I'm not going to get into all that. But so we've got, before you are 4 parcels upon which a house can be built on each one of them. And this proposal is to reconfigure those parcels so that you have a much better pattern of development. The private road will remain a private road, but there will be an additional dedication to increase its width from 15 feet to 25 feet per the conditions and as offered by Mr. Brown, who's here today. That road will be improved to state fire prevention code standards. There will be a turnaround at the end of it that meets the city ordinance requirements. Very importantly, city sewer will be extended from Candle Pine Lane up this private road to serve all of the proposed dwellings, the 4 that are before you today. We have the density overall doesn't increase a bit. The density is just under 1 unit per 2 acres for the entire 7 parcels that are in existence today, and that will be reconfigured. 4 that are before you today, 3 that have already been recommended for approval and are before council, and this will go to council together. The folks who live in the villages West Neck, abutting this property, their density over the entire development is 2 units per acre. Again, this is 1 per every 2 acres or just under. And the lots are obviously very small because they're clustered with the golf course that hopefully will come back one of these days. What we're doing is all the area at the very top north that's surrounded by property owned by the city of Virginia Beach to both the east and the north. Agreed to put a restriction on that property that'll be preserved as it is, natural wooded area, enforceable by the city. We have no concerns if the Villages West Neck Homeowners Association wants to take some lead in making sure that that stays the case moving forward. But that we're putting it in the deed restrictions, and so that exists. The same is true. We're talking about doing retaining a 20-foot treed buffer on these properties adjacent to the existing homes in the Villages West Neck, and that also applies to the 3 lots that are already before council that are being reconfigured, that are closer to Indian River Road, that'll be serviced by this road. This road will have a shared maintenance agreement that all 7 eventual houses to be built on it will have to be solely responsible for its maintenance. Candle Pine Lane is similarly a private road. All this property was zoned agriculture unrestricted until 1968, and basically my characterization of that is zoning with no restrictions is really not zoning, and that's how this situation came to exist. Mr. Brown is doing what I think everyone a big service by having this property developed the way it should be developed, and most importantly, to those who may be concerned about stormwater, the density of this property and the amount of trees, it certainly won't produce the stormwater. The lack of density won't produce the amount of stormwater that the surrounding existing developments have. The last condition, which we are not asking to be removed, but I just will point out, the running of the models for this property wouldn't be required if we develop the lots or the parcels as they currently are. And Mr. Brown's agreeable to the condition, but just want me to put on the record that because some of these models, if they've never been run before, experience with this, they have errors in them. We've cleaned up a lot of that. The development community has sacrificed a lot of money in helping the city in that regard and some other subcatchment areas, but this development doesn't have the ability to have to do 10 or 12 runs of the model. So we're not saying take it out, but I'm just putting that out there. If the modeling, causes it to have to be run multiple times, that it may just go back to being developed as it is, because it just won't be economically feasible to do all these other improvements and run the model time after time after time. But we appreciate the staff's recommendation. Hope that you all see the benefit of this as the best way for these properties to be developed, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, any questions? All right, Mr. Burdon, we'll give you a chance to rebut once we hear
Thank you.
from some other speakers. All right, go ahead.
The first speaker is Albert Daly, followed by Keith Lynch.
Sir, you can just state your name.
Albert Daly.
Albert.
Good afternoon, everyone. On a personal level, I'll be deeply saddened by the removal of nature for the construction project submitted for approval. The present condition of the surrounding land is a main reason for purchasing the property in 2012. Hopefully, the lots that are proposed will be big enough to minimize the natural impact. And initially, it did not seem probable that any construction would take place anytime soon, as there was a proposed roadway that was far back on the list of improvements. The major concern for myself, and I think for most of my neighbors, is the drainage. Although I'm at the high end of Charisma Court, I had to spend over $7,000 to improve drainage, which included 4 drains and installing flower beds to try to soak up the water. The backyard was so wet, no grass would grow, and all we had was mud. As I consider myself the lucky one on the street in that regard, although I still have some wet and muddy areas in my back and my side yards. I would just ask to please take into consideration the drainage problem with the removal of trees and the building up of the land for construction before approving this project. As you know, the area in question at this time is very swampy with little or no access. It is very concerning to think about more water runoff coming the way of the residents in our community. In addition to the above, some questions I have are: who will monitor the condition of the proposed natural area at the end of Charisma Court for any tree problems such as downed or rotten trees that may become a problem? Also, who will be responsible to make sure this stays a natural area free of any clearing or any building? And who will maintain and monitor the proposed roadway into the construction site? Also, the traffic on Indian River Road is pretty dangerous with the narrow condition of the road. And are there any plans to widen this road, especially with the current increase in developments? Lastly, if this plan is approved and proceeds forward, what if we still have flooding along the backyards of the property owners along Charisma Court and other affected homeowners? And I'd just like to thank everybody for this opportunity to voice my opinion. I appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Mr. Daly, where do you live?
Number 43 is my lot.
Is there any questions for Mr. Daly? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Mr. Horsley. Hold on, sir.
Sir, did you say that water runs off of this property onto your property? Is that what you said?
Well, we just want to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Okay.
It's everything's wet right now, and we just don't want it to become worse.
So
by removal of trees and building up of construction sites for homes, they usually raise those up, so everything's going to run off of there. So we're concerned.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Keith Lynch, followed by Thomas Carini.
How you doing, Mr. Lynch? Just state
Good
your name.
afternoon, everybody. Thomas Carini.
Carini?
Carini, C-A-R-I-N-I. I basically want to say these few things. I think possibly to retain the water, to have access water pond in the back. And will the road be entering? Well, will the road be entering? I see the planning now, so I kind of understand that a little more. Indian River Road needs to be updated. There's quite a few accidents, and it's flooding. How will the utilities be brought in to the homes? Sewers, electric, gas, and water. That's very important. And we were looking for a 40-foot setback from the back. I'm lot number 44. Some examples of flooding: Bow Creek, the golf course, and the rec center is built right on a stream. Asheville Park, you have all kinds of flooding. Bernadette Street, off Seaboard, ever since they built the school, that street floods. And Indian River Road floods on any heavy rain. I don't know how they're going to make a 90-degree turn into this road. And thank you for listening to me. It's important that Indian River Road be fixed first, I think. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Crane, any questions? Thank you. Did you call Mr. Lynch?
Yes, recalling Keith Lynch.
Afternoon. You can just state your name
Good
for the record.
afternoon. My name is Keith Lynch. I'm from lot 45 of the group here before you today. Before starting, I'd like to make one request of you folks, and I know, because I understand as a former public servant, this is a very important job. But I would respectfully request that you take a time while you're here, sometime during your hours of work, take a ride down the road 1 mile and ride through the West Neck community and see what has taken place there because of what developers promised, developers planned, the city supported, the city zoned, and too often builders, we're left with the residue. They buy it, they build it, they bait us into it. We had a wonderful community. The centerpiece of our community is terrible. The emotional devastation for people 70s and 80 years old has been tremendous. So I want to thank you for your work, but encourage you, please take a ride and see the pride. 90% of that community is owner occupied. The people were made promises weren't kept, and it really has had a debilitating effect on beyond what you can imagine unless you live there. My thoughts are primary. There's a nexus to this, and that, of course, is the density. I live next door to Tommy. I cut our grass today, my grass, but there's still standing water between my house and his house. So with that, I've got some bullet points I'd like to share with you. There are 7 homes that are greatly affected now by the current proposal, and I do respect property values. I've been involved in these situations. Water mitigation is of great concern to all. You know that. Water density was increased, and the density was increased by adding the golf course. It's also interesting to note that all the land that was moved, all the modifications made to make the contours of a golf course, all 4 retention ponds in the West Neck community are on the golf course. There's none. The current people that we're fighting with who threatened to arrest us for going on the property have put steel walls behind the property for people who have complained, have threatened us with their deep pockets and so forth, and continue to do so. My latest information is coming in from our homeowner association that they have now made accusations, at least innuendo, that maybe we started the fire in the 6-foot weeds.
Mr. Lynch, can we just focus on this agenda item now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, thank you.
The increased density is a direct contradiction to the city's comprehensive plan. In October, after Matthew, it resulted in flood protection provided for the city. A bond referendum was passed. The proposed 20-foot buffer and water mitigation would be a major concern and entirely inadequate. The development of the Brown property would definitely decrease the ability of the land to absorb water, increase impervious surfaces, including structures, hardscape, required access roads, driveways, sidewalks, and other amenities such as pools, tennis courts, or outbuildings. Additionally, there's 175 yards of woods you can't see through right now behind our house. Additionally, the undoubted removal of deciduous trees, which can absorb 11,000 gallons of water per tree, would be extremely harmful. Our zip code receives 47 inches of rain a year, 623 gallons per inch. For every 1,000 square feet of hardscape and impervious surfaces, there's a runoff of 29,000 gallons of water. Based on these figures, a 20-foot buffer is totally inadequate. Our house is 31 feet from our property line, which would mean we could be 51 feet from a structure on this property. You have to ride there to see the smallness of our lots. The current vegetation, a natural buffer of 70 feet, protecting the vegetation would greatly benefit the water mitigation and provide us with a natural area that we paid for. All these lots were prime lots. Folks, this is a very important decision for all of us.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. You've passed
If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
That's all the speakers.
All right, Mr. Bourdon, if you'd like to come forward.
The first thing I want to say is Mr. Lynch's concerns, I agree with him 1,000%. As far as what has happened to the golf course at West Neck, it is an abomination, and I could not agree with him. I think he's hit that part of this spot on. But that's a different matter, and hopefully that. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I was actually
He's actually complimenting you.
agreeing with you on what your big point is, and I completely empathize and sympathize, as I'm certain all members of the commission do as well. So that's not falling on deaf ears. I can assure you of that. But the stormwater issue, when that development took place, we didn't have the stormwater regulations we have today, and we didn't have the modeling that we have today. And this property is not creating the problems that they are experiencing because it's completely natural at this point. It's, if anything, I do believe, I can't swear to it, but I do believe when this is all said and done, their circumstance will be improved from a drainage standpoint. It certainly won't be hindered in any way by this development. The 20-foot buffer is a visual buffer. The stormwater management will be something that'll be, dealt with through this site plan approval process. That is condition number 8. That water that will be, what water will be coming off of this, very 1 unit per almost 2 acres of land development will be handled on site, and there will be no water that will be discharged from the site onto their properties. But again, I get that, but we have and the bond referendum and everything else, the city's spending so much money to make sure that we don't create stormwater problems in the future, and that's the protection here. Developing the property as it is with 7, in this case 4 lots, would not require that. So the reality of it is it can only be beneficial or neutral. It cannot be worse, and it won't be worse in any way. And the other issue is not something that Mr. Brown can do anything about, but I do believe there's hope that that situation may come to a positive conclusion, but patience will be the key word. The road that'll be built, as I said earlier, will meet the safety requirements. This is not creating additional development units at all, just making them better for everyone involved, and that's why your staff has recommended approval. The conditions, as I've said, are acceptable, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Verdon. Any questions? So, Mr. Verdon, I'll ask, so right now there's 4 lots. There are 4 lots, correct, right now?
There are 4 pieces of property now upon which a house can be constructed on.
And what is the width of that, I guess, is it a dirt road, paved road, going back
The width
there?
is 15 feet.
15?
15, 1-5.
And you're going to make it what?
25.
With a turnaround or a cul-de-sac?
With a hammerhead at the end, paved to handle all the heavy fire equipment, the width of the pavement, et cetera, the depth of the pavement, and the utilities being primarily city sewer will come in from the south, from Candlepine. And if y'all haven't been down and driven Candlepine, and I think it's Riddick Lane, the quality of the homes there, the quality of the homes here will be equal or likely better, but those are very, very nice homes. They will not be inexpensive homes at all, and the people who will build them and live in them will be able to afford to maintain the road, because it'll be built brand new, and so it's not something that's going to be an issue until years down the road. And the HOA will be mandatory. They'll have to pay into it for the maintenance of the road in the future.
Is there any, it was brought up, is there any plans for a turn lane or anything at Indian River?
We don't have
Improvements?
we don't have any property that's on Indian River Road on the east side of Indian River, on the east side of where this road intersects with it. So I don't believe that there is, because Indian River Road in a lot of spots is only 30 feet wide as far as right-of-way. I don't believe there's right-of-way there today. I believe the city, though, does own they may not own the one property directly adjacent to to the east, northeast corner, but further, and maybe even adjacent, but the next one over they own. There's no house there. It's what Aubrey was referring to in the informal, that where the city had bought a couple of lots out there that could have been built on using some of the state money from ACUs, or it's money that we got to reduce density based on some. I won't get it. I don't want to misstate how it works. But the city owns the properties along Indian River Road, but I don't know that they own the one directly adjacent. If they do, then there's certainly the opportunity to do that.
And this is going to be a private road, not public?
Yeah, private road, yes.
All right, any other questions, Mr. Horsley?
No, I've just got a couple. I don't have any questions for Mr. Badon. I just got a couple of comments to make. I'm very, very aware of some of the problems that the people in West Neck have been having, but this is entirely a different situation. Hopefully something can be done to rectify the problems at West Neck, because I think I was probably on Planning Commission when that was approved originally. I remember when it was farmland and before it was developed, and it was approved, and it developed, and it flourished at that time. But that's not this application. This application is a big improvement over what could be done there, and the density is not going to change. And with the stormwater management program that we have in play now, I don't think you people have got to worry about any water running off of this property onto your property. I don't, as for whether your water can run on them or not, I don't imagine that's going to happen, but their property will be taken care of through the stormwater ordinance. So I really think this is an improvement for this property, and I would support this application.
All right, thank you, Mr. Horsley. Is there any other comments, commissioners? None? Can I have a motion?
I make a motion the application be approved.
Motion by Mr. Horsley. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Costin.
The vote is now open.
Who are you waiting for?
Mr. Clemens? By a vote of 8-0, the item has been recommended for approval.
All right, thank you. All right, next item.
Agenda item 12, Nicholas Aguiliano, is an application for a conditional use permit for a short-term rental at 505 20th and a half Street in Council District 6.
Please come forward and state your name.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Giuliano.
And you're the owner? You're the owner?
Giuliano. Yeah.
You're the owner?
Oh, sorry. Thought you were asking me how to say my last name. I get that all the time. Yes, I'm the property owner at 505 20 and a half Street.
All right, go ahead and
all the conditions are acceptable.
Okay. Is there any questions? None? All right. I think we have some opposition, so we're going to hear them. We're going to give you a chance to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, first speaker.
Calling Sandy Diedrich, followed by Sarah Welch.
Hello, if you can just state your name and your address.
Sandra Dietrich, 518 20 and a half Street.
Okay.
The two structures that are duplex, it's actually a fourplex that are requesting are down the street from us. They have very tight parking, almost no green space. Only one of the units has green space in front, none in back, because it's a 4-unit complex. 20 Half Street has no street parking. It's an alley, so there is no off-street parking. It's very, very tight street, so it's difficult for 2 cars to pass, so that's one of our concerns. But our main concern is, having lived there for 5 years, is when parties and it gets out of control. There's more than the allotted number of house guests permitted. And we had an incident a couple of years ago where there were over 100 people in one of the units next door to us. And the police came, tried to empty the house of all the extra guests, and the police told us there was no recourse. Their hands were tied. And at a recent Beach Resort Civic meeting, we had someone, a sergeant from the 2nd Precinct, who again confirmed that the police hands are tied. So when there's a large party or something going on, unless a crime is committed, they have no recourse. As a neighbor, we have no recourse other than to call the police. Maybe they can empty the house, but that is it. The other concern is that we found out that the Planning Commission has never revoked a conditional use permit. So as neighbors in the neighborhood, we have no recourse. We're permanent residents, but we have no one. The police hands are tied. The Planning Commission is issuing all these conditional use permits, but as permanent residents, we just don't have a recourse. And if you call the number on the signs that are now required for short-term rentals, it goes to a voicemail, and then you get no call back. Also, if you don't know the owner, how do you get in touch if there is a problem? And now the house behind us, that owner has moved to Texas. So if there are issues, we have his email, but what do we do? Again, there's no recourse. So we just feel that as permanent residents who want to live in a nice neighborhood close to the beach, as residents, we're not being heard. It's more like you're treating the neighborhoods as a tourist destination as opposed to the permanent residents, that we just have no recourse. So I feel that the Planning Commission should take a look at maybe placing some kind of density cap per block so that a block does not have all short-term rentals, that there is a balance between permanent residents and short-term rentals. So I just ask for your consideration in this. Like I say, the street is very narrow. We're an alley. We'd like to remain a neighborhood as more where you get to know your neighbors rather than people checking in and checking out and checking in and checking out.
All right. Ms. Dietrich, I'm going to ask if there's any questions for her where she sits. I have a couple questions. Anyway, the incident, was that a short-term rental, a licensed one that was next door to you?
I'm not sure that they were licensed at the time. We also have, I will add one more other thing. We have.
I just want to specifically the 100-person party. Was that a
I'm not
licensed
sure
one?
if they had.
I'm just trying to see what jurisdiction the planning staff has.
But there were 100 people. There were 10 police cars, and the police said there was nothing they could do.
Well, the staff's here. I'm sure they're taking this in and they'll see what they can do. I'm not sure. I know as long as I've been here, I don't know if we've ever revoked a STR, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think we have.
That's what I'm saying. You haven't, so.
Because it's still new and they're going through the process. Where's your house compared to this one?
We're on the opposite side of the street, about 1, 2, 3, 4.
So you're on 21st then?
I'm on 20 and a half.
You're on, this is 20th and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're on the other side of the street.
Right.
So, okay.
We're on the opposite side of the street.
So 518, so you're closer to like Town Bank?
I'm sorry?
You're closer to Town Bank that way, not west. I'm trying to get your bearings where you're at.
I'm just across
This is 505 and you're 518?
I'm 518. I'm only about 5 doors up on the opposite side.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Mr. Costa?
I just had a comment. I believe that staff added people who could respond to these types of complaints. Is that not so?
For staff, absolutely responds to when we get violations. Unfortunately, we don't work 24 hours a day. So if there is a complaint that comes in after hours, that would go to police. They would be the ones to respond to that. If police respond, we have a good relationship with the police. If they respond to a short-term rental, we are notified so that we can make note of that and take the proper violation action if necessary for that short-term rental. But we do respond to that.
So that's something that's been added since a few years ago. so that they can track if there's an issue at a short-term rental so that you can get that complaint in that would then cause the revoking of a short-term rental at some point.
Well, in response to that, we have at 52620 Half Street, he does not have a conditional use permit, and he's still running an illegitimate short-term rental. So, and we've made complaints, and
I will look into that property.
so, again, that's our concern.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sarah
Next.
Welch.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. My name's Sarah Welch, and I reside at 522 20.5 Street. I'm right down the street from the proposed rentals, 4 or 5 houses down. I stand in opposition of these short-term rentals for the rationale that the street's already active, very active in my opinion, with the short-term rentals at 518, 525, and the unpermitted one at 524, which is directly next to my property. There are 35 houses between Mediterranean and Baltic, because that's where we're at, and on between the north side of 20th, the south side of 20.5 and 21st Street. So that's where the 35 houses are. With the current number of short-term rentals, we've had situations of loud tenants, parking issues, lawns unkept. I've submitted photos in the past to the short-term rental community. Every time there's a renter in our illegal home that's right next to mine. We also have had one at, that Sandy mentioned at 516 where the owners tried short-term renting and it blew up. And they quickly stopped doing it. Regularly, especially through the 100 days of summer that we all love between Memorial Day and Labor Day, there are parking issues or actually travel issues when you're trying to get in and out of Mediterranean and Baltic when people are moving in and out. There are not many parking spots typically for these houses, and so when people are moving in, they have a tendency to park where they can and then park behind those cars while they're moving in and moving out. And again, on this alleyway, you're trying to go get groceries on a Saturday. I work full time. You're trying to go get groceries on a Saturday and, you struggle getting out onto the street. So I just think that with these additional short-term rentals, the parking issues are going to increase. And I had a situation where I had a renter come to my property, ring my doorbell, ask me if they could pay me to park in my driveway while they were renting the house next door. And we continuously have folks who live on 21st Street, but their driveways are on 20.5. The renters park in their driveways, and then they try to get out and they have to go to the house and ask the renters to move their car so they can get out their driveway. I moved to Virginia Beach in 2019. And I purposely bought in this area because it was residential and not full of investor real estate. I drove from Sandbridge to North Beach to look for locations. And I liked this area and Old Beach. And so what I want to do is, as I see my time's running out, but I want to ask you all to truly consider a density cap. Sandy and I have talked a lot about it. I think a 5 to 10% density cap is a very reasonable thing for this commission to think about. The other thing that I want to remind all of you is that once a short-term rental address is identified as short-term rental, it is a short-term rental at that address. It can change owners multiple times, and it remains a short-term rental. And so I just want to make sure that you think about that as you make your decisions. And I respectfully request you take my feedback into consideration, and I thank you in advance for your time.
Any questions? None? Okay, next speaker.
That's all the
Thank you.
speakers for this item.
It is, all right. Sir, if you can come up front. Can you address any concerns that you just heard for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do do appreciate the concerns, brought on by Sandra and Sarah. I'm happy to give you my phone number and stay in constant communication. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Jamie George, who's next up on the agenda. We're the property owners at 505 and 507 20.5 Street. We've been neighbors for almost 6 years, and we're the original owners of the current property constructed in 2017. We still live there and plan to remain property owners for the foreseeable future. These houses will always hold a special place in our hearts as we both started and have begun to raise our families there. We love the community as you do, walks to the farmers market, local businesses, the boardwalk, etc. But we are both looking to begin our next chapter. As our families grow, we are looking to relocate within Virginia Beach. And when we do, we feel that operating our properties as short-term rentals, it's what's best for our families' futures. But we still plan to stay active within our local Vibe District community as property owners. As shown on the agenda, the surrounding area has dozens of short-term rentals operating with a conditional use permit and likely many more to come with the construction now underway at Atlantic Park. The properties are within the Oceanfront Resort Short-Term Overlay District, and also many of the properties on our street and near us operate as longer-term rentals with 6 to 12-month leases. We plan to contract with Sojourn Property Management to manage our properties and rental contracts. Nicole Pace, the Chief Operating Officer of Sojourn, is in attendance today. They market themselves as high-end rentals, and thus we plan to charge a premium. This alone will help dictate our clientele, as it sounds like that's a bit of a concern. And all prospective renters will go through a fraud and background check, and we have the ability to approve or deny renters. Our preference is to rent to traveling families and traveling professionals. After all, tourism is a key economic driver in Virginia Beach. We do not intend to be any sort of detriment to the community. We plan to invest in it and help it continue to thrive. And to directly address some of those concerns, we do have our own parking here. I can understand higher up on more west on 20.5 Street, where some of those houses are compact and it's shared parking, where that can be difficult. But we have clearly defined parking spaces, and we'll have clearly defined parking spaces for each of our units, 2 off-street parking spaces per unit. And we've also contracted with the local business to have a 3rd off-street parking space in order to meet the city requirement of 3 off-street parking spaces per bedroom. We haven't had an issue living on the property for almost 6 years. I understand it can get tight on the street sometimes, but we do have that off-street parking available. Again, happy to provide our number to our neighbors. We want to be neighborly throughout this process, and we're going to continue to be involved property owners and keep up with the property and all that. Thank you.
Hold on. Any questions? Sure. Ms. Quaylar.
You had mentioned in your comments that you have a property manager who's going to be managing the short-term rental.
Yes.
And have you had the opportunity, do they have a plan in place, if you will, should there be a complaint for the property?
Yeah, can I invite her up to speak?
That's up to Ms. Quaylar. Yeah.
Sure.
Hi, Nicole Pace from Sojourn. We are a local real estate brokerage and property management company. We started in DC in 2019 and moved down and opened in Virginia in 2020. Opened our brokerage in 2022 in Virginia Beach. We manage about 300 properties from New Jersey to North Carolina. We're very, very experienced property managers. We hire local on-the-ground hospitality managers. We have lots of great rapport in Norfolk with our neighbors. In there, we have our signs up with our phone numbers on them, so would not be opposed to that being one of the plans, but we do make sure that everybody in the neighborhood knows to call us. We have somebody that can respond in every neighborhood that we operate in within 20 minutes. We also contract with a local security company, so if we were to have any problems, we understand that the police can't do anything, but the property manager can come and revoke a stay. Because once you give the property a short-term rental license, these people are transient and not residential, so we can come in, change the codes. All of our codes are remote controlled, so at any point we can revoke access. And in this area, I don't know if anyone else in Virginia Beach is doing this, but I do know in Norfolk and North Carolina, we're the only company backed by Lloyd's of London. So we have a third-party security system, like screening system that Nick brought up. So if you book with us on any platform, anywhere, the first thing you have to do is verify your identity. Your identity has to match your credit card. Your credit card has to match the reservation. It's a big circle. No codes are released. No addresses are released. Nothing is released until we make sure that all of those pieces come together. And because of that, we have almost no problems at all in 6 states. So yeah, we We went through the COVID and the crazy of all the renters, and we take a lot of pride in operating legal, safe, short-term rentals that cater to professionals and families.
Thank you very much.
So hold on, let me ask you just a scenario. I'm just curious.
Yes.
So let's say it happens. I just want to know, what happens if there's 100 people in the house? What do you do?
Well, we would call our security company, and then we would revoke access, right? We would go in, we'd start clearing it out. I'm not saying it would be a perfect scenario, right? We would hope to partner with local law enforcement to help us, but I think the difference is if the property owner or the property manager is there with the police and says, like, this is trespassing, these people are not allowed to be on this property, the codes are revoked, everybody's got to go. But I will tell you, like, we have noise monitors and cameras in every single unit. I also don't want to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to clear 100 people out. But I own the company, and I personally monitor what's going on in this region at night. So once those noise monitors start going off and those cameras like pick up too much like front door opening and closing too often, we're already on it. We're there when the first 12 people get there, right? We're not showing up 2 hours later when the cars are lined up down the street and the situation's completely out of control.
Sure. Yeah. Is there a fine?
We do put a $500 fine for like smoking and noise in our thing. It's not always enforceable on all the platforms, but it's very much.
I know it's different for every manager.
But the thing is, with Superhog, which is our identity program, that's the Lloyd's of London program, you're forced to buy a damage waiver and you're forced to put your credit card on file. So once you do that, you're much less likely to go in and destroy someone's home because you now are like legally responsible. Where if you book on Airbnb, you could just show up and Airbnb covers you. Like they have an insurance policy. But with us, we don't care what platform you're booked on. You have to buy this insurance policy and that you have to sign something saying like you're not going to intentionally cause any damage, right? We understand if like an accident happens, but
all right.
So it really is like probably the best deterrent out there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? I have one for the owner. The parking space, with the way it's shown, is there actually 8 parking spaces there?
Yes, the entire property is 4 units. So there's 2 that face 20.5 Street, as you see there. And then there's 2 other units that are going to continue to operate as private residences that face 20th Street. They both, as we are technically a condominium, they both signed off on our application for the conditional use permit. So there is 8 spaces, and it's 2 off-street parking spaces per unit, which was the city requirement when the property was built.
Understand. Now I understand. Okay, so the parking for the front units are in the back too.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go into discussion if there is any. Anybody? I'll start if you guys want to jump in. I know this is in the OR district. The OR district has that element of rental properties. I know one of the speakers stated that she looked and I guess did her due diligence and seeing if she wanted to live there. But I drove around there too, and I know the area, and there's like 1-story duplexes all in that area. So there is a rental identity in there, and I guess it's improving. And I see this. I think there was a duplex where this fourplex was, right? And now they're in an OR district. However, I hear the residents, and it all comes down to management. And then that's where, sorry to say, that we need help from the planning department staffing. So I know we're understaffed, and these odd hours where these things are happening, it's a control issue that we can't get to. It puts us in a bad situation because we have to sit here and vote yes or no. It's an OR district, but then these other units that are illegal or poor management are the ones that are making it hard for us to vote. So that's my comment. I need to hear from you guys, see where you guys want to go on this.
I don't know if I can help you or not, but I'm very sympathetic to the lady that spoke earlier. But like I say, it's in the OR district, and I guess it's, we can make all the rules in the world, but if it's really hard to enforce a lot of them, and if the police can't get it done, it's a bad situation. And so it was interesting to hear from the the management, the young lady that spoke that manages properties, it seems like they've got their act together, and maybe, but I think staff has heard what the lady spoke about, and I think they're going to try to do something to rectify those situations with the police department and whatever, and because that's planning staff, they're not policemen. I mean, but they do the best they can, and like I say, we could use a few more when we can get that approved. But so I don't know whether that I'm in favor of the application. I guess it's in the right district for it, and George lives down that way, and he says it's in a rental district. So I guess that's kind of what that property is. But I do have sympathy for the people who live there that are full-time residents there. And this is one of the things back when we first started talking about short-term rentals years ago. I said that to get into communities where people live. But we tried to rectify that by establishing the OR districts, and you just happened to end up being in one. So I guess deep down, I've would have never been a big fan of short-term rentals, but I have to abide by the ordinance, and according to what our ordinance is, I guess this one should fit into this area. So I don't know if that helped you much tonight, George, but that's kind of the way I feel. I guess I would have to support it.
All right, Mr. Costin, go ahead.
I think I saw staff taking an address down, the one that y'all mentioned, that was operating illegally. So that's going to be addressed. And like they said, it's in the OR district, and I don't even know if we're going to have say-so in this in the future. But I'd move that we, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Costin. Ms. Cuellar?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's a lot of risk involved when it comes to short-term rental, both from the property owner and for the renter. And I was reassured today, looking at the hearing from the applicant and the steps that he's taking to be the best neighbor possible when it comes to a short-term rental. So I want to thank the management company for providing that. As if I were living down on 20th and Half Street, I would be reassured by that. I'm also very empathetic to the residents who are here today. But given the diversity in housing that it offers to our city, I would be grateful too for the Planning Commission to do the best that we're able to when it comes to the complaints and the management. I know it is difficult, but as we continue this dialogue to be the best neighbors that we could be to each other, I just want to thank the applicant and the management company, so I will support this application.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes,
Mr.
thank you,
Clemens?
Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of comments. I'm very empathetic to the neighbor's situation. I would point out that I think this is a great opportunity to try to build improved relationship and responses with the police department in that particular area, and perhaps with respect to all short-term rental communities. There's got to be some way forward in terms of maintaining peaceful living environment for the people who live here, as well as allowing those who do come to visit our city to be able to enjoy it. But thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Well, I think, Mr. Horsley, you said what I was thinking is, and I really appreciate the presentation with the management, because it all comes down to management. That's what it's all about. And I'd really like if maybe planning department can get either a resume or something when they do the application on who that management firm is to help us, and not just sorry to say, because I've heard some of them have been the house cleaners over there, and are they responsive? Or, if they're a distant owner, who do they have to represent them over there? But I think that's our number one problem is management, that they need to be responsive. And I appreciate the plan you gave us. And I'm going to support it if someone can make a motion.
You want me to make a motion?
Yeah.
I make a motion we approve the application based on the facts that were provided by the applicant and his management company.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Horsley.
Second.
Second by Ms. Cuellar.
The vote is open. By a vote of 8-0, the item has been recommended for approval.
All right, thank you. Next and I guess last item.
Agenda item number 13, Jamie George, is an application for a conditional use permit, a short-term rental at 507 20th and a half Street in Council District 6.
State your name, please.
Jamie George.
Go ahead and state your application.
Excuse me?
You can go ahead and state your application or any information you need us to know.
Oh, yeah, I mean, so I'm just sort of in the same boat as Nick. As you said, we live right next door to each other. So I'm the property at 507. And I do, I mean, I completely understand the residents' concerns. You know, we live there and deal with the same traffic and all the same thing. But I mean, I just want to reassure them that, I mean, we're doing this, as he said, to sort of transition out of this area to raise our children in more of like a neighborhood with a larger yard, but possibly with the hopes of returning to these homes. So, I mean, I think that's why we invested in Nicole and Sojourn to manage these properties for us, because, you know, we don't want to burn bridges and we want them to be managed and run efficiently, just for, you know, the extent of our property and possibly going back.
So do you live there now?
I do.
So do you know the people that came forward and had concerns?
I mean, I recognize them
Okay,
sort
I
of just
didn't
from the street, but don't know them personally, no.
All right, I just knew if you, okay.
Yes.
Any questions for it? None? Yes.
I was impressed that Mr. Uliano, your next-door neighbor, offered his cell number to the neighbors and said that he would personally stand behind all of the residents, and I wondered if you shared his feeling.
Of course, 1,000%. I mean, as I said, there may be a time when in years to come, once my daughter is older, that I'd like to return to this property. I mean, I love the neighborhood. I love the house. So, I mean, I want to be there to be neighborly and make things as easy for everyone that lives there permanently.
Okay,
So
thank
I
you.
definitely would share that.
All right, thank you. All right, next speaker.
We have
You can have a seat.
same speakers, Sandy Diedrich, followed by Sarah Welch, if they have any more comments, I suppose.
Would you like to come forward, and is there anything that you want to bring up that you might want to say? No? You're more than welcome. This is your chance. I know. We're sorry too.
I appreciate the comments of providing phone numbers and contact information. I will say that the other owners have said they would do that, and one has done that. So I just want to make sure that this commission knows that a lot of times the owners will say they'll do that, and then they don't. So I just want to make sure that people understood that.
Sure, and I think staff took that down, and I'm sure they'll take the address on the one that was being done illegally.
And the only other comment I want to make on the one that's being done illegally is I'm in constant contact with Miss Channing Tuttle. And she gets probably photographs from me at least on a weekly basis of the renters in the house illegally. So
Are you getting a response?
I continuously hear that, and I believe it's the truth. I'm not denigrating by any means, but they say it takes a lot to build a case to remove someone from doing something illegally. And if it's that hard to build a case from someone who's doing it illegally, I can't imagine what it would be like to try to revoke one. And when I contacted about what the process was for revocation, no one could explain that process to me because they've never done it. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to come forward and say anything, or are you okay? Okay, all right. So we're closed. Guys, open for discussion, or I'll entertain a motion. Anybody?
I'm going to hope that with the management of these two rentals, that this would be a best practice in moving forward in the short-term rental area. So I'm going to support the application.
All right, got a motion from Ms. Quaylar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Horsley.
The vote is open. By a vote of 8-0, this item has been recommended for approval.
All right, that concludes our public forum today. Thank you.